and welcome back to Differentiation of Instruction to Support Standards Implementation. This is part 2, called Setting Learning Goals or Learning Targets and Defining Success Criteria at the Correct DOK level, DOK standing for Depth of Knowledge. The objectives for part 2 are to develop learning goals based on curricular standards, analyze those goals and identify the proper depth of knowledge, and develop success criteria that are aligned with each of those depth of knowledge levels within the learning goals. There's a lot going on there. So the importance of having clear objectives in guiding differentiated instruction for diverse learners is that you have to be clear about what you want the learners to know and do, and it has to be in language that they understand. And the more clear you are, the wider the audience that will be able to understand what it is they need to know and do. It will also clarify for you as an instructor, once you've aligned your instruction to the standards, it will clarify for you about how you can then differentiate and where you can differentiate. Instead of in your mind thinking, I have to write completely separate lesson plans for each learner, that is not the case. You just have to make small changes here and there. So thinking about your learning goals, it's really important to understand that they differ from activity descriptions. When I first started teaching, I really just focused on the activity and the lesson and what I was giving to students, as opposed to thinking about them in the terms of what the student will learn and what the student will achieve. It is important that these learning goals, learning targets are observable and measurable. It clearly states what mastery will look like. These are not ambiguous statements here. They shouldn't be. And they definitely need to be aligned with the standard. So there has to be some kind of demonstration of the target to the objective and backwards to the standard, which brings us back to CUD. You have to be able to identify what the students need to clearly know and clearly do, the skills that they need to accomplish, to demonstrate their knowledge. And remember, they don't want to be in those big, broad understand, that realm of understanding, because sometimes those aren't concrete. They're not concrete enough. The purpose of the learning goals or learning targets are so your students know what they need to know and do. The purpose of KUD is so you, the instructor, knows what you need to teach and assess. So there's two purposes here for addressing these objectives from both ends. Going to take this same standard that we've looked at before for our L3 and identify some objectives for it. And the objectives need to be in actionable language and easy for the students to understand. So notice here on the left, you can start them with the student will be able to, or put them in I can statements. That'll tell you really quickly if your students understand your objectives, if they can put I can in front of it, and then they can show you that they understood it. Another thing to keep in mind here is that these are specific, they align with the standard, and they do focus on student understanding and mastery. It's not the place for, the activity and the learning is a place for creativity and open-ended questions and discussions, but this is not the place for it. So here's an example of a learning goal, a learning target for this standard. Describe in depth the character, setting, or event in a story or drama, drawing in specific details in the text. Remember, we kind of broke that apart earlier into the know and understand and do. And now here is a goal or a learning target for a student. Find clues within the story that tell us about the character. Straightforward. Another goal from the same standard would be use these same clues that you identified to explain a character's personality, motivations, and how they might change throughout the story. And can you notice goal 2 definitely builds on the ability to do goal 1. So this had to do with making sure you had your objectives and your goals in order. But have you ever thought you had all of these things aligned and your students missed the target? I don't know, mine surely have. Sometimes you write them, but you realize your objective didn't directly match the standard. It matched something you were imagining about your greater understanding, but not the direct standard itself. Was the task to demonstrate the learning too challenging? Did you have too much a gap between their ability and what you were wanting them to show you that they could do? And finally, did your assessment level match the practice level? Sometimes we do continual formative assessment, and the students do very well. They ace all of the formative assessments, and you think, oh, I'm a great teacher, everything's perfect. And then you give the formal summative assessment, and they do terrible. We can't just blame the learner here. What did we do to contribute to that gap? Oftentimes this has to do with the level of the assessment, the depth of knowledge. We've practiced at one cognitive level, and then we're asking them to perform or be assessed at a different one. So at this point, I'm going to ask you to pause the video and navigate to a document called the Depth of Knowledge Overview Chart. This is on the course resource document. It's not one of the regular uploaded documents that go with the course. And what I'd like you to do is go review that document, and it looks like this. And it has the 4 levels of depth of knowledge, and then it gives you verbs that help clue you in to the level of depth of knowledge. And then the right-hand column gives you some evidence to argue which level of DOK. I'm going to just use the word DOK from here forward. So going backwards, for these 2 goals, I'm going to ask you to reference the depth of knowledge chart and find the verbs in the 2 goals and which level of DOK they refer to. So at this time, go ahead and pause the video and look over that DOK chart. Now that you've had a chance to look over the DOK levels and identify the verbs that were in our goals, here's the 2 that I came up with: find the clues and use and explain. And to me, those are DOK levels 1 and 3. What's my justification? I'm going to give you my justification for DOK 1. I have to go back to my know, do, understand, think about those things, identify the verbs. I think it's DOK 1, and my justification is simply you're locating the features of a place or people. So just finding them and identifying the figurative language. Those are both DOK 1 because we're just identifying things. You could argue DOK 2, depending on the difficulty of the text or the readiness of your students. And the justifications for it being DOK 2 might be they're identifying patterns in events or behavior, or they're using context clues to identify the meaning of unfamiliar words. So yes, they are distinct levels, but there's a lot of variables in there that can change how you might identify the DOK level. So now that I've done that for you, I'm going to ask you to pause and write a justification for the learning goal 2 that we had there, and come back when you have an answer. So here's learning goal 2. Use the clues to explain a character's personality, etc. I'm going to pause the video, and I want you to come up with the justification for my DOK level of DOK 3 for goal 2. And the justification that I have is that they have to explain phenomena in terms of the concepts. This is much higher level. They have to support their ideas with details and examples. So they have to have the idea and then find the evidence, and they have to develop a logical argument. So these are the reasons I identified it as depth of knowledge level 3. Now we've unpacked a standard. We've identified the know, understand, and do. We have written objectives. We have identified the depth of knowledge level, and we've justified our argument for the depth of knowledge level. We are ready. We are lesson planning at this point, and now we're ready to write our assessments or identify our assessments. And we do that by identifying success criteria. We have to be able to tell students, how will they know that they're successful? So now we have to give the students something to aim for. You'll notice on this slide on the left, I picked one of those, the learning goal number 2, and rewritten the DOK verbs and level 3 in the middle box. Now we just need to write that success criteria. So for success criteria 1, and I'm going to have 3 because there were 3 verbs in the DOK level 3 identifier. I can explain a character's personality in detail using multiple examples from the story to support my ideas. And I've given you can pause this and read what that might look like from a student's perspective. Success criteria 2, I can describe what motivates a character and provide reasons for their choices in the story. And success criteria 3, I can identify how a character changes over time and connect these changes to events in the story. So again, these are all back from that original RL3 standard. We got the KUD, we wrote the objectives, we identified the depth of knowledge levels, and then I wrote, because goal 2 had the 3 different verbs in it, for DOK 3, I'm writing 3 separate success criteria, and my assessment should mirror these directly. Remember, the reason for success criteria is to assess student achievement and demonstrate the mastery of the objective. Okay, it's not extra practice problems. It's not to simplify content. It's not at this point to encourage creativity and divergent thinking. That happens elsewhere, but not here. Okay, that's a lot. But so now it is time for you to try different parts of this entire process. Going to ask you to pause for a while and try this exercise. You're going to navigate to the document that's called Standards to Learning Goals to DOK Aligned Success Criteria. This is a document in your course documents. And it's a big table that identifies each column that we've been working through. You'll notice on the left is the standard, the learning goal from that standard, or one of the learning goals from that standard, may not be all of them. The verb that was used to identify the DOK level, the justification for that DOK, because remember, some of them you might call a 2 or a 3, and it's important in your mind to clarify why you're choosing a 2 or a 3. And then in the far right column is the success criteria needed to guide the student to what success looks like in plain language that they can understand and is measurable. So you're going to pause for quite a while. There are a lot of examples here that are from several different content areas. So you can choose around one that you're familiar with, or try a few that you're not even familiar with, and see if you can fill in those empty boxes. Go ahead and pause the video. I'll see you in a while. Well, how'd you do? It's a little challenging, but I think once you see it all laid out, it starts to make a lot more sense. In the same document area, there is a key for you to check your work that is filled in. Now, don't get upset if your answers do not fully match my answers. You are also going to teach this content in a slightly different way. Unfortunately, I mean, we interpret some of these standards and learning goals in different ways. Your students need to be clear with what you plan to accomplish when teaching that standard. So go ahead and check yourself. And I really encourage you to maybe bring the table with the empty squares to a department meeting or to work with your peers to see how they interpret writing those. And the more that an instructional team is on the same page with how to do this process, the greater the gains you will see with your students, because they will start to experience continuity between standards, objectives, learning targets, and assessments. This is the end of topic number 2. There's a set of discussion questions for you to bring to your team about setting learning goals, defining success criteria, and identifying DOK levels. do you currently identify the DOK levels for your learning objectives? What do you think aligning the objectives and the DOK levels and your success criteria might do for your students? What specific strategies might you try to measure student mastery at different DOK levels? Again, the objectives for this section were to develop learning goals based on the standards, analyze those goals, identify the appropriate DOK levels, and develop success criteria that are aligned with each DOK level. Good luck, and I'll see you at the next topic.